Hey everybody, it is the Angry Honey Badger here, and today it is time, finally, for the tier list for patch 6.1. And oh my, how the winds of change have swept across the tier list and things have moved up and down and all around, and some champions are in very similar positions to where they were, but we've seen many changes that we'll get to in just a second. The reason we weren't doing tier lists though during the preseason, too many changes in the preseason, too many things that get nerfed and buffed right away, just lots and lots of changes really that we need to analyze longer instead of making a tier list that probably isn't the most accurate, and or we know when things are going to get super nerfed when things come out that are super imbalanced, such as items that were making some champions too good, certain champions that got hot and nerfed right away, so all types of little things. But let's go ahead and dive into the S tier. Go ahead and leave me a like and a share if you could, and let's go ahead and get started. As you know, the S tier is that God tier. This is the best of the best in the game. We're going to talk about two champions within this tier. You can go ahead and look over the other champions too, as this is on the screen. But the two we're going to talk about are Graves and Quinn, both of which you would call ADCs, both of which I would not play in the ADC position. I mean, you could. It's not impossible. But I think right now they're best in the jungle for Graves and Quinn in mid. Well, let's jump into Graves. I think Jungle Graves kind of caught a lot of people by surprise. I've been playing it in my streams. I think it's incredibly fun. It's also a really, really fun counter to go counter invade a lot of champions. He brings so much burst with him that he's just kind of outrageously strong in that aspect. The other nice thing too about a Graves jungle that we've kind of saw when Kindred was introduced before we got Graves tweaked with his new changes. Double ADC teams can work as long as you have the right setup for your team. You have to make sure you bring enough engage and enough front line tankiness to those team compositions, and it makes it a very really strong opportunity for your team to have two ADCs. Graves does this well, especially with the amount of burst that he brings. So Graves has probably flown up the list quite a bit since the last one and finds himself to be a jungler now, which I would find accurate. That's where you should be playing him if you're going to be playing Graves. Now next, we're going to move on to Quinn. Quinn did see some small changes through the preseason. Some would say they were handfuls of nerfs sent to her, but still probably not enough. We actually haven't seen her played a ton all over the place, but I, as a person who's been playing Quinn a lot, I think she's still incredibly overpowered. I'm okay if they keep her this way because I think she's counterable for sure because she's still very squishy, but she's got a very strong kit, and I put her in mid lane position for now in strength, and at the strongest, maybe this will get changed, but honestly, she can wreck anybody in mid right now. I literally fear no person in mid as Quinn. She just does way too much damage at level 1 and 2 she just can't lose lane. You'll win it every time. She's gonna sit in mid. Although, honestly, I think she's just about as strong in top lane. Maybe not quite as much because there's a few beefier people with some good burst depending on who you're playing against and how good they are. In the jungle, she does well there because she can roam quite well when she hits level 6 and show up for surprise ganks. And obviously, you can still play her as an ADC if you really want her. She does fine down there. She counters a couple ADCs really hard. Draven can't deal with her at all. She blinds him and she knocks him back. He can't catch axes. He can't throw axes. He becomes worthless. So there's many positions she's good in right now. I think you can play her in any spot except for as a support because she's not a support, but another incredibly strong champion right now. Next up, we're going to be moving on to the A tier. This is a great tier. Fantastic champions is this tier. Very, very viable. Just outside of, the top tier. A lot of champions, obviously, because a lot of people would disagree with this standpoint, but League's a pretty damn balanced game. If you lose to something that you're not a fan of, maybe you just played bad, get over it. Anyways, let's move on and talk about two champions of this tier. Lots of changes, obviously. Look over these lists, see where champions fall, but the two that we're going to talk about are going to be Fiddlesticks as a jungler and Poppy as a support. Now, let's talk about Fiddlesticks real quick. Fiddlesticks was previously in the list, I think, under either D tier or F tier. Maybe C tier at one point, which is only okay, but he has come up quite a bit due to two things, actually. They did a mana reduction cost on his E, which is fantastic, and the other good thing that they've done for Fiddlesticks is they've replaced the jungle item to now a jungle item that makes some kind of sense for him. So that's one big change to get him up the list, but previously last jungle item literally made no sense to buy. Absolutely none, and therefore you were actually losing out on experience, which then made sense for you to buy it, which then you weren't ever using because, let's face it, Fiddlesticks doesn't really auto-attack a lot. I mean, yes, you should do that when your drain's on cooldown and other things are happening, but in theory, he's not really an auto attack heavy champion. So he has slid up the list. He's actually quite strong in team fights too right now. Also, when you see more squishy champions and ADCs in the mix, and he can dive onto them with his ultimate, he murders through them instantly. So he's become quite viable in some of these aspects. Mostly the change to the jungle items and the jungle itself make him a lot stronger of a champion. The next champion we're going to talk about is Poppy as a support. Now, this is just kind of another one of those general things that I like to talk about in case you've forgotten. I only put a champion down in a position where I think they are the strongest. So if you're thinking about, well, where is blah 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 for jungle as opposed to you put them as a top laner, I think they're better as a top laner, therefore I put them there on the list. So Poppy right now I value the most as an A tier support. She is good in the top lane as well, and she is fine in the jungle. In fact, both of those are probably in the A tier too, but I want to put her in as a support right now because I think she has a lot of interesting things that can help that lane. Mostly the part where she can prevent people from diving onto her ADCs is a very strong thing. Also, pounding people into walls. There's lots of walls along the bot lane side. So she does a good job as a support that actually brings a little bit of damage, a handful of disengage, and just overall a new unique kit that a lot of people keep forgetting about, that the way you use Poppy as a support is you can actually harass pretty dang well because she has that ranged auto attack on her passive once it resets every 8-ish, 10-ish seconds, however long it is. You can harass down the enemy support and the enemy ADC really well with it, and you can do this typically while trading for free while doing so, because you can immediately pick it up as they then try to harass you, and you get that shield. So she comes into important play when it comes to harassing the enemy bot side lane, and when it comes to engaging, disengaging, and other things that she has up her sleeve. So Poppy as an A tier support right now, very, very good. Try it out if you have not. You might have some fun with it, and it's pretty dang good. Moving things on to the B tier, this is the good tier, the viable tier. These champions are still competitive. Typically outside of B tier, you'll stop seeing champions being played in the LCS. Sometimes obviously a champion will squeak through from my C tier, probably not the D tier, maybe one from the D tier. And F tier is just random, we'll get to that in a little bit. But B tier is about the end of where competitive viability is prolific. You could still obviously play champion from outside of this tier. If you're like a really good player with this champion, you've been playing him since season 1, and you're just a mastermind of the champion, yes, you can always win on any champion. That's always a thing. But from here, their viability starts to fall a little bit. So let's talk about the two that are in here that we want to see. They're highlighted in blue. That's going to be Darius and Azir. Now, previously, Darius, I believe, was an A tier, at one point S tier, and Azir was S tier for a while, and then he moved to A. Now he's down in B. The reason these two champions have fallen out, let's start off with Darius. Darius right now, with the way the meta is and the way champions are being picked and the ones coming out, he's getting kited around too much. Sure, he has some pretty good damage, no arguments there. He can obviously reset with the ultimate, do a ton of true damage. Not going to take that away from him. And he can win lane in certain matchups if he gets the upper hand early. But the problem is, a lot of these champions that we're seeing now, especially like with a Fiorz all the time in top lane and other tanks that are just almost too big for him to kill, he's fallen off quite hard, I think. Obviously, B tier makes him still viable, but he has fallen down from his previous ranks. Mainly, I just want to say it again, and I've said it in streams, he just gets kited around way too much. Against good players and good teams, you can't get in to do crap. The next champion then, of course, is Azir. Azir was really good for a long time. We've basically just seen him get nerfed a little bit, and a little bit, and a little bit, and a little bit, over and over. So he's just slowly been falling down. Also, team comps right now don't make the most sense for him. Games don't go quite as long as we are used to. Some of them do go long, but not always. Some games are very fast. I know I've already probably completed more games this season in sub 20 minutes than I did all last season, and the season just started. So games aren't quite as long, and Azir really is a late game menace. He still does good damage throughout the game, but not as much. So he has also fallen down the list quite a bit, but obviously still viable. Still can play him, just not where he used to be. Moving on to the C tier, there's no specific champions I'm actually going to really talk about in this tier. You can just take a look over it at the moment. If you look at it too, some champions have actually moved up a little bit from the bottom. Some champions that were a little further up in the previous tiers have come down. We have a handful of tanky junglers in here, not all of them. Some of them have fallen off a little bit. We have some mid lanes we don't see all the time or just aren't always consistent or viable. And a few other changes in this tier, nothing really too crazy. And once again, if you look at this and you compare it to the LCS, the LPL, the LCK, a lot of champions in here aren't really getting a lot of play or might like seldomly get played just because of some differences. So no crazy things in here. I'm not saying avoid these champions. I don't even want to say that they're lacking, even though it says lacking, but could be worse. They just aren't as good as the people who are above them. So just be aware of some of the champions in this list. Obviously, I love playing some of these champions, but they're not perfect right now for the current meta or where they're currently at. That moves things down to the D tier. Now the D tier, I think these champions do need some kind of help. Singed has been down here for a while. Galio's been down here for a while. Urgot is now back here. He probably would have been here at the beginning of Season 5, but he did get changes that were good for him during Season 5, made him actually very strong, and then they nerfed the crap out of him in the last handful of patches, and he's crap again. So he's back down in D. And Taric, as much as he was played in the LCS for one game, and they did win, I still don't really value him in certain ways. He's not terrible, but he's definitely not great. He does need some help in my opinion, so he's going to be hanging out down here too. And then finally, that takes us into the F tier. In the F tier, things have changed a little bit. I did pull a few champions out of here that were hard to place. Teemo's still going to be remaining hard to place, but as a rule of thumb, if you just wanted a rough estimate, he's probably a B tier. I think if you're good enough with him, you are at least A tier with him, because crazy things. Anyways, we can skip him for now. Zilean, still can't figure out where to put that damn dude. He just doesn't fit right now, in my opinion. And then Mordekaiser, as you know, is actually my favorite champion. Having a very hard time placing him. The changes that we saw from last season, the nerfs, the buffs, the tweaks, the changes, the lack of seeing him getting banned all the time, then nobody's able to play him. People are afraid to play him because they don't know how to play him. Then people play him in the new lanes now because they tweaked his shield, and then I've been playing him in the jungle myself to give that a roll to see how that goes, and it's actually not terrible, but it works with certain team comps. He's just way too hard to place right now. I'm wondering what they'll do to fix this in the future, or if they think, hey, he's actually quite good, because I think Mord is still very strong. I still think he hits like a freaking dump truck, but where does it fit and how can you utilize it? Is it too hard to utilize it, and does that make him fall down the list? So he's going to be difficult to place for now. But that is going to be the tier list for 5, or not 5, we're on 6.1. Go ahead and rewind if you can't remember where champion's at. I'm pretty sure everybody's in here, and I'm not sure if I labeled anybody twice. That happens occasionally. I move so many things around. I would not be surprised if there are a couple doubles somewhere. If you see them, point them out down below in the comments, and I will try to make sure I make a note of that and fix that in my giant spreadsheet listy thingy mabobberski. So that's the tier list. Thanks you all for watching. If you could leave it a like, I would greatly appreciate that. And other than that, I wish you the best of luck on the fields of justice.